A savory tart doesn't need to take a day and a half to make, as long as you have store-bought puff pastry. By following a few techniques and strategies for preparing your puff pastry and assembling your filling, you can have a simple, versatile, and delicious dinner on the table in an hour.
By the way, this lesson is from our Savory Tarts and Galettes class, which is out now on ATK Classes on the America's Test Kitchen app. In this class, we'll teach you how to use different pastry crusts to make hearty, meatless tarts and free-form galettes. You'll learn how to blind bake a tart shell for a sturdy crust, and we'll even share tips for assembling the perfect filling, from caramelizing onions to using the right cheese. Learn all of this and more at your own pace, and have fun while you do it. But first, let's get back to that tart.
Puff pastry is a great thing to keep in your freezer for really any occasion. You can use it for desserts, you can use it for tarts, you can use it for pigs in a blanket. Whatever you choose to do, it's a great ingredient to have on hand. And when you're buying puff pastry, it often comes in packages of 2. So all you need to do is take one of the puff pastries and transfer it to your refrigerator for 24 hours to thaw. Or if you forget to do that, like I often do, you can transfer it to your counter for 30 minutes to an hour to thaw. First thing we want to do is roll out our puff pastry. So I'm going to lightly flour the counter so it doesn't stick. If you have your puff pastry sitting out for too long and it gets a little bit too soft, you can simply transfer it back to your refrigerator to firm up a little bit. It'll make it easier to work with. So now we're going to roll this out into a 10-inch square. So we're starting with a 9 by 9. So we're not rolling it out too much, but we do want to stretch it out a little bit. This kind of just makes it more uniform. Okay, I think we're good. 10 by 10. Excellent. Now I have a rimmed baking sheet here lined with parchment paper. And now that we've rolled out our dough, we can transfer it to our rimmed baking sheet. All right, now there's one last thing we need to do to prepare our puff pastry, and that's to create a bit of a border so that our filling doesn't fall out after we bake it in the oven. So it's very easy to do. I'm just gonna take a pastry brush, just gonna dip the pastry brush in a little water. We're gonna brush the very outside of our puff pastry. This is gonna act like a glue so that the puff pastry can stick to itself. We're gonna fold this over and create a 1/2-inch border all the way around the sides of the puff pastry. Just gonna press down to seal it. And you'll see I'm folding the corners on top of themselves, pressing it to seal the pastry. And there we go. So easy. Our puff pastry is all set and ready to go, so now we can talk about our filling. When it comes to the ingredients that you're using for your filling, the options are pretty much endless, but we're gonna be focusing on vegetables, starting with our caramelized onions. We made a big batch of caramelized onions, which you'll find in our technique video, and I've had these in the fridge. These are a great thing to have on hand. They're rich, they're delicious, but when it comes to the base of your tart, you want to focus on cooked vegetables. So you could use sauteed mushrooms, you could use sauteed fennel. After you've cooked the vegetables, you're getting rid of any of that excess moisture so it doesn't sog out your tart shell. So I have a 1/2 cup of caramelized onions, and we're going to add a little bit of fresh herbs to them. We're looking for a 1/4 teaspoon of fresh thyme to pair with your onions. Caramelized onions and thyme work so well together. Think of French onion soup. It just is really lovely. Now, in order to mince your thyme, you simply pull the leaves right off the woody stem. Take our knife and run through the herbs back and forth. Thyme is delicious, but a little does go a long way, so you don't want to go overkill with your thyme. When you're using hearty herbs in your tart like thyme or rosemary, you want to make sure that you add them into your vegetables before you put them in the oven. If you wanted something fresh like parsley or basil, you'll want to sprinkle those on at the very end. The next thing we're going to use for our filling are cherry tomatoes. This is 6 ounces of cherry tomatoes, and all we want to do is just cut them in half. We have our cooked element, we have our fresh element, and now we can talk about one of my favorite things of all time, a creamy element. Cheese. We're using 2 ounces of goat cheese here. If you don't have goat cheese, but you want to stay in the same family, you could certainly use something like blue cheese, feta cheese, maybe even cotija, but any crumbly cheese, such as goat cheese, would be a great option for your tart. We have all of our ingredients ready, so now we can assemble our tart. The first thing we're going to add to our tart is our caramelized onions. You want to use the cooked element as the base to the rest of your ingredients. And what we're doing is we're using that border that we created as a guide in terms of how far out we want to spread the filling. So I have a spoon here. You can use an offset spatula, whatever works. Just make sure every little section of that square that we have here gets a little onion. So are nice and jammy too, which also acts as a great glue for the rest of our ingredients to stick to the tart. Again, you want to be mindful of that border. The border that we created is going to puff up twice as high as the center of our tart. So we don't want the filling to touch the border because it's going to weigh it down. Next up, we have our tomatoes. Just gonna sprinkle these on. Again, just make sure it's nice and even. And lastly, we have our goat cheese. This is from a log of goat cheese that I crumbled myself, and it's gonna melt really nicely when it goes into the oven. In a pinch, you could certainly use the pre-crumbled goat cheese, but it's just not gonna melt as well. So now we're just gonna sprinkle with a little bit of salt and pepper, just to season those tomatoes, really. How easy was that? We are now ready to bring our tart to the oven. I have my oven rack adjusted to the upper middle position and heated to 425 degrees. We're gonna bake this until it gets puffed and golden brown, which should take 20 to 24 minutes, and I'm gonna rotate it halfway through baking. How beautiful does this look? I'm so excited, and it was so easy. Now this has been sitting out on a cooling rack for about 15 minutes, so it's easy to handle, and we're gonna transfer it to our cutting board. You can grab the parchment paper, lift up the tart, transfer it to our cutting board, and then I'm gonna use a fish spatula or a thin spatula to get under the tart and remove the parchment. You can see, because we made that border, that the edges are nice and puffed up and really holding in that filling. They're super flaky. The tomatoes are just shriveled up from the oven, so they're gonna be nice and juicy when we cut into it. It looks elegant. It was so easy. Let's cut into it. This tart serves 4, so you can cut it into quarters and maybe serve it with a side salad. But you could also cut this into smaller pieces and serve it as a nice appetizer for your guests. And we'll just take a little section because we need to taste it and make sure that our guests will enjoy it, obviously. This tastes like it took all day, but since we had wonderful ingredients on hand, it was so easy to put together. This savory tart recipe is the perfect reason to keep puff pastry in your freezer for whenever the mood strikes. And you have a formula for mixing and matching cheese, vegetables, and other items in your fridge for a great filling. By creating a sturdy border and filling it with ingredients that aren't going to weigh it down, you'll have an impressive tart that'll work every time for a quick and easy meal.
Now that you know how to make a puff pastry tart for dinner, you're ready to take the next step. And with ATK Classes, you'll get access to a wide variety of lessons filled with masterful techniques, helpful videos, and step-by-step photos. From knife skills and making hand-rolled pasta to baking and frosting incredible cakes, and so much more. Download the America's Test Kitchen app and start learning with ATK Classes today.